Good afternoon. Welcome back to our afternoon session. I do have to say we are in a little bit of a time pressure right now because it is about 1:40, and due to the fact that we're in San Diego, we have a lot of people taking flights. So 3 o'clock is really our time that we have to be done by. So on that, I would like to start off with a discussion and overview of the University of California. Oh, I'm sorry. We have to do roll call first. So roll call and then B2.
Regent Aguiano, Bachelor. Bachelor here. Blas, Chu. Here. Chu here. Cohen. Here. Cohen here. Drake.
Here.
Drake here. Elliott.
Here.
Elliott here. Goober, Hernandez, Kounalakis. Kounalakis here. Lieb.
Here.
Lieb here. Makarasian.
Here.
Makarasian here. Montesantos. Montesantos here. Newsom. Oakley. Oakley here. Park. Park here. Perez. Pouchot. Riley.
Here.
Riley here. Rendon. Robinson. Sherman. Sherman here. Suarez. Suarez here. Thurmond. And Timmons. Timmons here. You have a quorum.
Thank you. I want to just open up by reestablishing the fact that, this overview and discussion of University of California Delegation of Authority is something that is for future decisions. It has nothing to do with what was done with the Big Ten, UCLA, and so forth. This is really about the future. And what I had asked our general counsel to do is kind of review all of our delegation of authorities so that we could have an initial discussion today about it to see and give people, especially our new regents, a little bit of idea of what this delegation of authority is, what the amounts are, and whether anything needs to be changed or any proposal for changes. So I don't expect this item to be a long item. I think it's really, we all got the reports prior to this meeting. It's really more of a discussion, and so I'll open it up to General Counsel Robinson.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll take your hint. We could actually reduce it down to 0 because, as you've indicated, this is just a discussion item, and we do have time to consider this matter. So we could do that, or we could try to brief.
Maybe 2 or 3 minutes of a discussion of opening, and then we can open it up for if there are any questions about it or any thoughts in terms of the current delegation of authority and what might or might not be something that people are interested in looking at deeper.
Okay, fair enough.
And then we could come back, either in November or January with you could have some specific proposals based on a little bit of the feedback we get today. But I'm hoping that, 15 minutes should be enough to actually give everybody an opportunity to ask questions or concerns.
Okay,
please.
so I'm going to turn it over immediately to my colleague, Maria Shanley, who is a managing counsel in my department. She'll provide a brief overview of where we currently are with delegations. So, Maria, you've heard the hint that we've been given.
Absolutely. 3 minutes. I got it. Good afternoon, Regents. Hi, Charlie asked me to briefly touch on some of the key elements of the university's existing governance around delegations of authority. Beginning with Article 9, Section 9 of the California Constitution, which provides the Board of Regents with authority over the governance of the university and expressly contemplates that the board may, quote, delegate to its committees or to the faculty of the university or to others such authority or functions as it may deem wise. As a matter of policy, it is of course important for the board to reserve authority over matters of the highest significance to the university. But appropriate delegations of authority can permit the board to focus its energies on strategic matters rather than on routine transactions. To that end, the board has delegated broad authority to the president and to the chancellors to manage the affairs of the university. And the president has further redelegated authority to the chancellors via letters of delegation. The board has also delegated authority to the principal officers of the regents, who are the secretary and chief of staff, general counsel, chief compliance and audit officer, and the chief investment officer, as well as to the academic senate, all in their respective areas of responsibility. The board has also delegated authority to board leadership to act via interim action on matters which, due to urgency, require action in between meetings of the board. An interim action item can be approved by the board chair and the chair of the standing committee with jurisdiction over the item. Such interim actions are reported to the board, but do not require ratification or further action by the board. Finally, the board has also delegated authority to certain of its standing committees, particularly to the Health Services Committee, to act on specified UC Health executive compensation matters and health business transaction matters within specified parameters without further action by the full board. In areas deemed to be of particular importance to the board, the regents have not delegated any authority, meaning that the board has expressly reserved all authority for itself to act. This includes matters of strategic importance, such as approving the university budget, tuition levels, campus long-range development plans, appointment of chancellors, and many more. In some subject matter areas, the board has delegated authority over transactions without any specific triggers that would require board action, regardless of the dollar value of those transactions. Although those matters are governed by substantive university policies and administrative controls. But in still other areas, the board has delegated authority over transactions up to a certain threshold or trigger above which board action is required. For example, capital project budgets over $70 million require approval by the regents, as do litigation settlement agreements over $1 million. There's a chart in the written item that shows a comparison of example board action triggers across various categories of transactions. And you can see that many of the board action triggers are stated in absolute dollar values, while some are stated in percentages of relevant budgets. Some are stated in qualitative rather than quantitative terms. For example, regents must prove litigation settlements that raise significant questions of university policy, regardless of the dollar value of the settlement. And further details are included in the written item. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Charlie to facilitate the discussion. I would be happy to answer any questions.
And to move the discussion along, there are two specific questions that would be useful to us as we try to develop a policy. You may recall that we came forward during the special meeting in August with a proposal. At that time, we heard kind of conflicting sentiments. One sentiment expressed was that we needed no change in the delegations and that there was a communication issue and it was a matter of making clear the expectations of the regents. We heard kind of a contrasting sentiment, which was for the important matters that we'd identified, there should be no delegation, the regent should retain authority altogether. So it would be useful for us to get a sense of where the board is on that question. And then the next question that would be useful to us, we received feedback that the triggers that we proposed in August might be too ambiguous. Some of the triggers might be too ambiguous to apply. And so an additional question that I have is, would it be the preference of the board only to have a financial trigger and to eliminate the more subjective triggers? So, and there may be other questions you had. Those are two in particular that I have.
And I'm assuming everybody recalls the earlier question that our general counsel proposed sort of in August, which was whether there was a change in delegation in those areas from the chancellors to the president, and then there were a couple comments on it. So
yeah, I can do 30 seconds on what. So the
yeah.
proposal in August was that the president would retain authority to make these kinds of decisions without the ability to redelegate to the chancellors. So that was one aspect of it. The president would have an obligation to go to the regents for these types of matters and at least let the board leadership know that something was in play. And then we had several triggers about when the policy would apply. So it had to do with a material adverse impact on another campus, material defined as 10% of the athletic budget. The transaction raises a significant question of university policy, or it's likely to have a significant risk of reputational harm. So those latter two triggers were, there was a question about whether or not they were too ambiguous for people to apply. So.
And so I have two people with questions. First of all, Regent Makarikian and then Regent Park.
Okay.
Thank you, Charlie. This question is for Charlie. Charlie, the word significant developments comes into the play in many different times in bylaws 30 and other places. Do we have a specific, is that up to the president to determine what's significant, or do we have just like for financial situation, when we get into materiality, do we have a good definition of what significant is?
Yeah.
That's the question. Then I have another question.
So we have both, in effect. The bylaws themselves require the president, provide broad authority to the president. It also require the president to keep the board informed of significant developments. I don't have the exact language in front of me, but together with the broad delegation and bylaw, Maria, help me here, is it 30 point?
Bylaw 30.
Yeah, bylaw 30. Together with the broad delegation and bylaw 30 is an obligation on the part of the president to keep the board informed of significant developments. And then there are a number of other delegations that have more specific triggers. So for example, and Maria has a table in the materials that shows some of those triggers. So for capital projects, for example, Maria, the trigger is 70 million. Yeah. So Regent Makarishan, it's both, right? There's a general rule that the president will keep the regents informed of significant developments, and then we have specific delegations as well.
But I guess my question is, who is it up to the president to say that, well, I didn't think that issue wasn't significant, or is significant, or is there a definition of it? The materiality of the numbers I understand on the $70 million for capital projects and so on. But for instance, I know this issue is brought up because of the UCLA decision, but that's the question. Who determines what is significant and whether the board should know or not know?
So it is true that except in the areas where there are specific triggers, the expectation is that the president will determine what's significant, and you're relying on the judgment of the president to make that determination, except in those areas where there are specific delegations and specific triggers.
Okay, so that issue is vague. I mean, that wording is vague. So it's really up to the president to make a decision, and his decision is final, I assume.
Well, no, the decision is not necessarily.
It's reversible. It's reversible, I understand.
The decision is not final because any authority that the regents have delegated, they still retain the authority to review that decision and take action.
Yes, to review the decision, or we even have the authority to reverse it based on the bylaws.
Yes, it's true that the regents have the authority to review a decision that's already been made and potentially reverse it, but of course there could be consequences associated with that.
Okay, my next question is on 8103. My understanding was that disposition and acquisition was not part of that 8103. It was just the capital projects design and budget for design of capital projects and construction of those that are below $70 million was under the delegation authority. I didn't know, or I have never been aware of the issue that up to $70 million of acquisition was up to the chancellors or the president to just decide.
Yeah, Maria, can you respond?
Yeah, I can address that. So Regent Makarishan, Regents Policy 8103 covers a range of capital project matters, including capital planning, capital budget, and it does include real estate transactions. And each transaction type, there's a whole list that each transaction type has a specific threshold or delegation or non-delegation. So each of them, it's not that all of them are subject to the $70 million threshold that I mentioned. That is for capital budget approvals, as you know.
Yes, but I thought the disposition of any of the assets of the university was up to the regents, and also acquisition of new land or buildings was up to the regents. I understand the construction and design and construction was always in the past 14, 15 years that I've been on, that has been the case, but I wasn't aware of the $70 million for acquisition. Can you give me some examples? Do you have any examples of an acquisition up to $70 million that was not brought to the regions?
Maria?
I don't know if Nathan or someone has an example.
You're talking about
It's something
acquisition of,
we'll probably have to. I would suggest to the chair that we review the acquisition and disposition of the property, because I thought as fiduciaries, we were responsible to decide the disposition
Yeah.
and acquisition of any project.
so let me
not-
suggest something. Why don't we take a look at the question that you've just raised and get back to you? And then, Mr. Chair, we can address other questions.
My thought would be that this really requires a much, this is almost at the heart of what we do as regents. And I think that this requires really us to go back and look and then present something at the governance committee. I think the governance committee is the best first step to really look at this and decide and make some of these determinations, because what we've done is given you a potpourri of all of the various delegations of authorities, and it's very difficult sitting here trying to even make a decision on that. So I think it's better for us to do that, although I will continue to talk to those people that have had questions so far. I'll keep going on that. And so I'm going to go to Regent Park and then Regent Timmons and Regent Ellis. And then after that, we might want to just figure out the process. And I think the process is, I'm hoping to get feedback from people as their thoughts on things. And then we can bring it up in governance with a really good, robust discussion about all of it and which things need to be reviewed more. And I think that would be the best approach. Regent Park.
Thank you, Charlie. With the understanding that this is going to be addressed further in governance, I just wanted to just reiterate that I agree with the approach that, matters of ordinary business are things that we have plenty of people to make decisions on, and it really is more the things of weighty consequence that may be controversial or difficult for many reasons, for which the board weighing in would be important. But appreciate many clarifications that you've made about even where the board has delegated something, if the board chooses to act, that it can. So
Yes.
with that, I'll wait until we have a further discussion in governance.
Great. Regent Timmons?
Okay, I'm following up on Regent Margarishian's. It's a definition again. So strategic importance is another thing that the regents hold on to, do not delegate authority to. And so I think understanding what's strategic and important to the university will help this process.
And that could be something that has some definition. I think that's a good point. I'm going to go to Regent Ellis and then Regent Chu.
Thank you. So again, like my comments are kind of looking more at the macro level, but even just looking at the most recent, what kind of spurred this discussion from the NCAA issues going on at UCLA. When I looked, when we look at the delegated authority, it was originally crafted in 1991. And, I don't think the board has revisited it since, to my knowledge. But if we turn back the clock to say 1992, it made sense. If we go to 2002 or 2012, probably still made sense. And at this point, we're at this, very highly changing landscape of NCAA athletics underway over the last several years, probably before the pandemic and now preceding after. But my thinking around this is, I think it's kind of incumbent upon us as regents to examine our policies and delegated authorities and different governance that we have in place on a regular basis, and not be more proactive rather than reactive as we are now. And that, could this have evolved prior to today or to the last several months, and we can see the changing tides of different things coming towards us and change our policies, change our delegated authorities and whatnot. I think that would be more of my approach. I know we have a lot of governing documents that would take a lot of staff time to help support us in doing that. So I recognize that constraint. So I'm glad that the governance committee will take this up in more earnest, and probably I just would like to throw that on the table of taking a more broader view of these things, that we, you know, be more intentional and proactive as we see. And granted, you know, there are unforeseen circumstances that may come, and then we do need to react. So we can't always be proactive, I recognize that, but as much as we can, try to evolve things as we see the landscape change before us, as opposed to trying to look in the rearview mirror to go forward. Is
Yeah,
kind of
and
my
that's,
take.
that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And that's what the purpose of the governance, my proposal for the governance committee to really evaluate it.
And I just, one last thing I wanted to kind of add was just, you know, I get each campus can act independently, and sometimes those independent decisions can have ramifications for the other campuses. You know, but I think there are certain decisions where, you know, the campus they need the authority to do what they need to do to operate the campus. And, you know, the ramifications system-wide will have to be dealt with, you know, on a case-by-case basis. But there are probably certain decisions that come along that we do need to look more systematic as an entire system with, you know, resting authority at the president and the regent. So I do recognize that, and we do need to, you know, I would say, like with the NCAA, you know, 30 years ago, probably made sense to leave it with the chancellors, and maybe going forward, maybe not so much anymore. But I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and I think the regents are unified in the fact that we leave as much as we can to the chancellors, because they do an incredible job in managing their campuses, and so definitely. Regent Chu?
Thank you, Chair Lee. Just to echo Regent Park's comments, I do appreciate the delegated authority conversation, and I think in the governance committee, we will really benefit from all that, especially as a new regent. One thing I would encourage and hope that President Drake will endeavor to do before we head to that conversation is really begin to survey, of course, your administrative team on areas where you actually would want to maybe change the thresholds. If it's actually prohibiting or inhibiting the university's ability and capacity to act quickly and does not necessarily have a strategic direction or needs strategic kind of guidance from the regents, I think those would be things that I'd be interested in hearing as well, because this is an opportunity for us to revisit what those thresholds could look like.
Yeah, I think it would be real important to have your input on it, obviously. Yeah, so that's great. And then Regent Riley, and then I think we'll move to the next one. Are you?
No.
Oh, you have your mic is on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I think that wraps it up. So I think what the direction I'm getting is, number one, I'll work with the president in terms of getting his input on these things, and as also talking to others, and then get back to you, and we'll have a governance, kind of an in-depth governance committee look at this. I think it's kind of at the heart of what we do. So thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, in the interest of trying to get through, we have 3 items that we have to still do. One are the committee reports, one is the campus safety, and then one also is the Berkeley discussion. I think what I'd like to do is maybe start off with the committee reports so that we can make sure that we have everybody here that could vote on those and get that done. So I think what I will start off with is, for the committee reports, reports will summarize what we discussed. You have received via board books a written summary from each committee. The committee chairs may highlight what is in the reports and point out what they wish to make. At the conclusion of each committee report, for those reports that have actions recommended by a committee, we'll call for a motion. So first we will start with Regent Park on the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. And there's one item, action item.
In the interest of time, I think that the committee report does a good job summarizing all of what we discussed. We do have one action item, which is acceptance of the Community College UC Transfer Task Force final report, which contains 8 additional recommendations. So we will be working towards overseeing and hearing more about how each of these recommendations are going to be implemented. Other items were in response to recent bills that have been passed or auditor suggestions. I will just highlight that UC Irvine did bring a really a novel partnership on debuting the first in-prison Bachelor of Arts program, which is definitely worth taking a look at if you have time to read it in your board books. And lastly, we did have a brief discussion about the $100 million that UC received on climate action research, seed, and matching grant funds from the state, which we're really excited about, and it doubles the research group's amount of funding that it's putting out on behalf of the state, and we're excited to hear more about what kind of activities that they will be funding. So I would like to move the committee report.
Moved and seconded. All those, I guess we have to take a roll
Roll
call.
call. Regents Aguiano.
Aye.
Aguiano, aye. Bachelor. Bachelor, aye. Bloss. Aye. Bloss, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Cohen. Aye. Cohen, aye. Drake. Aye. Drake, aye. Elliott. Aye. Elliott, aye. Goober. Hernandez. Kunalakis. Aye. Kunalakis, aye. Lieb.
Aye.
Lieb, aye. Mongratian.
Aye.
Mongratian, aye. Montesantos. Montesantos, aye. Newsom. Oakley. Aye. Oakley, aye. Park. Park, aye. Perez. Pouchot. Riley. Riley, aye. Rendon. Robinson. Sherman. Suarez.
Aye.
Suarez, aye. Thurmond.
Aye.
Thurmond, aye. Timmons. Timmons, aye. Report is approved.
Great. Chairman Schurz, Compliance and Audit Committee.
Thank you. The committee heard from Community Safety Officer Jody Steiger about the UC's use of what is designated as military equipment under California Assembly Bill 481. We were told about we were given an inventory of what items we use and what campuses use it to make sure that we were in compliance. The committee voted on it and approved the recommendation. With that, can I have a motion?
Moved and seconded. Can we have roll call?
Regent Aguiano. Aye. Aguiano, aye. Bachelor. Bachelor, aye. Bloss. Aye. Bloss, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Cohen. Cohen, aye. Drake.
Aye.
Drake, aye. Elliott. Aye. Elliott, aye. Kunalakis. Aye. Kunalakis, aye. Lieb.
Aye.
Lieb, aye. Mongratian.
Aye.
Mongratian, aye. Montesantos. Montesantos, aye. Newsom. Oakley.
Aye.
Oakley, aye. Park. Park, aye. Perez. Pouchot. Riley.
Aye.
Riley, aye. Rendon. Robinson. Sherman. Suarez.
Aye.
Suarez, aye. Thurmond. Thurmond, excuse me.
Aye.
Thurmond, aye. Timmons. Timmons, aye. Report is approved.
Great, thank you. Next, moving to Regent Cohen and the Finance and Capital Strategies Committee.
Sure. One discussion item preliminary on the budget there. The compact with the governor really provides the framework. The thing to watch is dropping revenues at the state level. So budget shortfalls are certainly quite possible by the time we get to January. 3 action items on buildings, 2 on the Berkeley campus, and 1 at the Parnassus Hospital, the academic building in San Francisco. So I'd ask for a motion and approval of.
Moved and seconded, roll call.
Aguiano. Aye. Aguiano, aye. Bachelor. Bachelor, aye. Bloss. Bloss, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Cohen. Aye. Cohen, aye. Drake.
Aye.
Drake, aye. Elliott. Aye. Elliott, aye. Kunalakis. Kunalakis, aye. Lieb.
Aye.
Lieb, aye. Mongratian.
Aye.
Mongratian, aye. Montesantos. Montesantos, aye. Oakley.
Aye.
Oakley, aye. Park. Park, aye. Riley.
Aye.
Riley, aye. Suarez.
Aye.
Suarez, aye. Thurmond.
Aye.
Thurmond, aye. Timmons. Timmons, aye. Report is approved.
Great, thank you. I'll quickly do governance because almost everybody was here during that, so you want to separate? No? Okay. So the first one was the approval of appointment and compensation for vice provost. For finance, okay. So we're going to pull out number 2. So we'll have 2 different votes on this. So the first one is approval of appointment and compensation for vice provost, academic personnel and programs, office of the president. Second item would be the salary increase for deputy laboratory director for operations and chief operating officer, Lawrence Berkeley Labs Those are the two that,
I'll move the first item.
what?
I'll make a motion for the first item.
First, moved and seconded?
Hold on, why don't we check with Lieutenant Governor quickly, see if we can just do something.
It's the performance award for the treasurer.
You're right, that's separate. I pulled that out. Well, okay.
So we'll vote on those two items
Yeah.
as presented. Right. And then
I pulled out the third one, so the first two are the provost that we discussed, and the second one is the deputy laboratory director,
And the meeting date.
and the meeting dates in 2024.
So
Thank
can I
you.
move the first two items together then?
Yeah, these three are all together.
Okay, the first,
And then
then I'll
we'll
make a
have a
motion
sep-
for the first three items.
Okay, first and seconded for the three items that we talked about, the dates, the vice provost, and the deputy director for,
I'm sorry, could we have the numbers of the items? I think the minute writer, and frankly, I would benefit from knowing exactly what we're voting on.
okay, I apologize for that.
Yeah. Except G2,
Yeah.
I believe.
So the numbers that you're voting on are what?
G1,
Yes,
G3, and G7 is what we're voting on now. We're going to
Okay,
vote on
thank you.
G2, the next.
okay, thank you.
The next vote. So we're pulling out the one item.
Incentive compensation.
Yeah, executive compensation, and we're going to,
Incentive.
incentives, yeah. And then we have the others. So I think that's clear enough, right?
Is there a second?
Okay. Second.
Okay. So this is for G1, G3, and G7. Regents Aguiano?
Aye.
Aguiano, aye. Bachelor? Bachelor, aye. Blas? Aye. Blas, aye. Chu? Chu, aye. Cohen? Aye. Cohen, aye. Drake?
Aye.
Drake, aye. Elliott? Aye. Elliott, aye. Kunalakis? Kunalakis, aye. Lieb?
Aye.
Lieb, aye. Makarasian?
Aye.
Makarasian, aye. Montesantos? Oakley?
Aye.
Oakley, aye. Park? Park, aye. Perez? Peugeot? Riley?
Aye.
Riley, aye. Suarez?
Aye.
Suarez, aye. Thurmond?
Aye.
Thurmond, aye. And Timmons? Timmons, aye. Report is approved. And
So the remaining action item is I guess it's G2.
G2.
Yeah, G2, which is incentive compensation for Chief Investment Officer and Vice President, Investments, Office of the President. So, what? Moved?
Second?
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Regent Aguiano?
Aye.
Aguiano, aye. Bachelor? Bachelor, aye. Blas? Blas, aye. Chu? Chu, aye. Cohen? Cohen, abstain. Drake?
Aye.
Drake, aye. Elliott? Aye. Elliott, aye. Kunalakis? Kunalakis, abstain. Lieb?
Aye.
Lieb, aye. Makarasian?
Aye.
Makarasian, aye. Montesantos? Montesantos, aye. Oakley?
Aye.
Oakley, aye. Park? Park, aye. Riley?
Aye.
Riley, aye. Suarez?
Aye.
Suarez, aye. Thurmond?
Abstain.
Thurmond, abstain. And Timmons? Timmons, aye. Report is approved.
Report is approved. We go then, and the only other thing we did in governance was the presentation of the annual report on diversity in campus and system-wide executive searches. Next, we go to Health Committee, and would that be Suarez?
Yes. So there was a number of items. The first was the report from the Executive Vice President Byington on COVID-19 and monkeypox. The second was the approval of the Parnassus Research and Academic Building at UCSF. The committee unanimously approved that item. The third was the addition of the quality performance metrics, which were recommended by the UC Health Clinic Quality Committee to the clinical quality dashboard. That item ended up getting deferred for a number of reasons. And then the last item was the report on covered affiliations. With that, can I have a motion?
Okay.
We don't, because
No action needed.
there was no action item on there, wasn't there?
Well, it would go to finance, and it went to finance, and so we approved it.
There you go.
Okay. Moving to investments. Regent Sherman is not here, so, in essence, what we did in in Investments Committee was review the performance for fiscal year 2021-22 of UC pension, endowment, blue and gold pool, and working capital and retirement savings. I think those that were there heard it, and it's all in the board books as well. So with that, no action. So I move then to, once again, Regent Suarez, this time with the National Laboratories Committee.
We had one item that was voted on, and it was amended slightly. It was to fund the Los Alamos National Laboratory Child Care Center. We originally asked for to use $2 million out of our fee to finance a child care center. And what came back is we approved $500,000 for the executive vice president of the National Labs to spend to investigate the process, and he's going to come back to us with a more detailed budget at the next meeting for the remainder of the money.
Great. Thank you. So do we do have one roll call vote?
Yes.
So do I hear a motion to? Moved and seconded?
Regent Aguiano.
Aye.
Aguiano, aye. Bachelor. Bachelor, aye. Blas. Blas, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Cohen. Cohen, aye. Drake.
Aye.
Drake, aye. Elliott.
Aye.
Elliott, aye. Kounalakis.
Aye.
Kounalakis, aye. Lieb.
Aye.
Lieb, aye. Makarasian.
Aye.
Makarasian, aye. Matasantos. Matasantos, aye. Oakley.
Aye.
Oakley, aye. Park. Park, aye. Riley.
Aye.
Riley, aye. Suarez.
Aye.
Suarez, aye. Thurmond. Timmons. Timmons, aye. Thurmond. Report is approved.
Great. Thank you very much. We now go to Regent Riley for public engagement.
Thank you, Chair. We had 4 discussion items yesterday in our Public Engagement and Development Committee meeting. The first item was part of our UC in Your Community series, which gives us an opportunity to learn more about the ways that our campuses are engaging and transforming the communities in their area. We heard about UCSD community stations, which are a network of field stations that are located in San Diego and the Tijuana border that support collaborative projects between the university and the outlying communities. We also heard about UCSD's extensive work in providing equitable access to health care at their Hillcrest Medical Center, and really want to thank Patty and her team for providing those updates and very inspiring work. We also received updates from Associate Vice President for Federal Governmental Relations, Chris Harrington, on federal developments, and Associate Vice President for State Governmental Relations, Kieran Flaherty. And lastly, we had a visit from San Diego Assemblyman Chris Ward, who was terrific, and we talked a lot about how we as regents could be helpful to our legislators in Sacramento, and how our legislators were supporting us. And Chris gave us some insights into his thoughts on the University of California and some of the challenges that are facing our state. And that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
We now move to Regent Park on the Special Committee on Innovation and Transfer.
Thank you. We had 4 discussion items on Tuesday, and they covered the ongoing discussion about the patent tracking system. We heard that the next couple of months will be really critical to understanding how we move forward with a new intellectual property management system. Luckily, there's a consultant that's helping do this pre-implementation planning, but we'll hear more about it over the coming year. Additionally, we heard about innovation and entrepreneurship funding strategies, and the CFO reported on a couple of ways in which proof of concept funds could be used at the various campuses, and we will get to more specificity on campus plans, as well as identify additional sources of funding to help in this regard. What was exciting is that the CFO touched on the development of a new President's Entrepreneurship Council to strengthen the entrepreneur mentor networks, and we're really excited about the development of that, and hope that we can continue to provide input as this proposal gets further developed. We had a speaker from San Diego, Professor Stephen Mayfield, who works with algae technology, and it was just really an amazing talk that he gave, and it is recorded. I would highly recommend that one because it really details his journey from research to innovation and entrepreneurship, and really has just a lot of potential to impact the world and dovetails with our sustainability goals. The last one was about enforcement of intellectual property rights, license compliance, and patent infringement. This was part one of part two, which we'll pick up in October at the meeting at UC Merced. But just, outside report confirmed that we are, within, I think, a reasonable approach on comparative universities in terms of how we approach license compliance and infringement. But there's always a little bit more refining work that we can do. And so we'll pick that back up in October when we hear from Alex Bustamante and his team about their approach to implement some of this work. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. And the final one is Regent Elliott on Special Committee on Nomination.
The Special Committee on Nominations met yesterday to make recommendations on appointments of new regents to standing committees, and also to appoint Regent Markarician as Vice Chair of the Finance and Capital Strategies Committee following this meeting. And with that, I move the report.
Great. That is an action item, so I think we do need a roll call. Do we have a motion to move? Moved and seconded. All those, well, I keep thinking back in my school board days where you could do that quickly without a roll call. Okay, we go to Tricia for the roll call.
Regent Aguiano.
Aye.
Aguiano, aye. Bachelor. Bachelor, aye. Blas. Aye. Blas, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Cohen. Aye. Cohen, aye. Drake.
Aye.
Drake, aye. Elliott.
Aye.
Elliott, aye. Kunalakis. Aye. Kunalakis, aye. Lieb.
Aye.
Lieb, aye. Makarasian.
Aye.
Makarasian, aye. Matasantos. Matasantos, aye. Oakley.
Aye.
Oakley, aye. Park. Park, aye. Riley.
Aye.
Riley, aye. Suarez. Suarez, aye. Thurmond. And Timmons. Timmons, aye. Report is approved.
Thank you. I just want to mention that we have a really hard stop for several people at 3 o'clock, which is going to be important to make sure we get everything done. We have 3 items left, but one of them I'm going to ask that we just postpone until next time, and that is the update on implementation progress of UC Community Safety Plan. I think it involves a broader discussion, and so I don't want to have to cut that one short. So the President has agreed that we should probably put this off until next time. So we will do that in November. The 2 other items we have, the first one, of course, we have our strategic campus overview of the Berkeley campus, which we will definitely do. But before we do that, I do want a special resolution for a special person, a special regent, and that is Regent Oakley. And I'm going to ask Regent Cohen to present over this.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. For those of us who have been on the board with Regent Oakley, it's truly been an honor. His advocacy for students has been amazing, and this experiment of having a leader of community colleges on the Board of Regents has really worked out, I think, much better than anyone could have expected. So we got a chance to thank him last night at our social dinner, but with that, I'll just ask for adoption of the resolution.
Okay. Do I hear a motion for the resolution?
I move.
Second?
For silence.
God, dies of a second. Ooh, no. Okay. So is it a roll call vote?
Yes, I'll
Yes,
do
it
it.
is roll call vote honoring Regent Ortiz Oakley.
Regent Aguiano. Aguiano, aye. Bachelor. Bachelor, aye. Blas. Blas, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Drake.
With congratulations and thanks. Aye.
Drake, aye. Elliott.
Thank you, and we'll miss you. Aye.
Elliott, aye. Kunalakis.
Recognizing he will now be part of a very important watchdog group. I hope I don't regret this. With great admiration to you and your service. Aye.
Kunalakis, aye. Lieb.
Very sorry to see Lee, but very happy for the future that you have, and a very, very strong aye.
Lieb, Lieb, aye. Montgracian.
A big eye for me.
Montgracian, aye. Montesantos. Montesantos, aye. Oakley. Park. Park, aye. Riley.
Absolutely aye, and you'll be missed.
Riley, aye. Suarez. Suarez, aye. Thurmond. And Timmons. Resolution is adopted.
Thank you. Okay, so it's 2:25, and I think we should go right to the strategic plan for Berkeley. And we have Chancellor Christ here.
Thank you for your, do we have minutes on this one too?
Do we have one?
We do not. Oh, great. No minutes because we made Chancellor Christ be patient with us, but at this point, the floor is yours.
Oh, good, the slides are up. So thank you, Chair Lieb. I want to begin by acknowledging the moment. You can turn to the next slide. The trauma that we've all experienced as individuals and institutions as a result of the pandemic, and the joy and the many challenges we face as we rebuild community. Next slide. I have enormous gratitude for the extraordinary work, dedication, and creativity that faculty, staff, and students showed during the pandemic, and gratitude to the legislature and the governor for intervening in our enrollment crisis and for their generous support in this year's budget. I've structured this presentation as a classical SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, because I think it enables us to see the complexity of Berkeley's position at this moment in time. Next. First, the strengths. Next. You all know the rankings and extraordinary awards and academic honors that our faculty have won. Next. What you may be less aware of are the gains we have made recently in regard to diversity. The 27% increase in new undergraduate Black students and 86% increase in new Black graduate students between 2018 and 2021, and a 46% in new undergraduate Latinx students and a 63% increase in new Latinx graduate students enrolled. This graph provides a different representation. Although diversity of students represented at the undergraduate level has increased over the past decade by many metrics, such as the share of students from underrepresented backgrounds, the campus is not satisfied. There's more progress to be made, and some trends are moving in the wrong direction. First-generation students have been flat, and the share of Pell-eligible students has even declined. We've been admitting those students, but not yielding them. We therefore think the reason is the high cost of attendance, a factor of the cost and scarcity of housing and our high self-help levels. We've taken steps that we hope might stop or reverse the trend concerning Pell-eligible students, lowered UCB self-help the past 2 years, and just implemented tiered self-help, which models a successful UCLA program and brings Berkeley in line with their range. The rationale for a lower self-help rate in the first year was to make it easier for first-year students to settle into university life and reduce the immediate pressure to find a job. We'll monitor the results of these two interventions with great interest. As our campus continues to work to make students, faculty, and staff part of a community that is better at being inclusive, just, and effectively fostering a sense of belonging for people from all backgrounds and viewpoints. Next. We've also been making progress on the diversification of our faculty through strengthening our recruitment practices. 50% of the latter faculty hired in 2020, 2021 identify as women. That's opposed to 35% of our ladder-ranked faculty overall. Similarly, 24% of the ladder-ranked faculty hired in 2020-2021 identify as members of historically marginalized groups, as opposed to only 12% of our faculty overall. This is a marked increase in the representation of groups that have been historically underrepresented from even 8 years ago. Of course, the representation of some groups remains low, and our progress toward diversity must continue. Next. Entrepreneurship is exploding on the Berkeley campus, from incubators to campus-held venture capital funds to entrepreneurship programs in the curriculum. Next. Whenever I give a tour, I always begin in the parking lot of the Lawrence Hall of Science, where you can see all of LBNL, and say that you can't understand Berkeley without understanding this relationship. For decades, it's been a transformational partnership. Next. Now the weaknesses. Next. We house the lowest proportion of our undergraduates by far than any other undergraduate UC campus. Next. Despite the generosity of this year's state budget, state funding has been declining in both nominal and real dollars for decades. Next. There's obviously a cost. While the student body has grown 47% over the last 3 decades, the latter faculty size has stayed roughly the same, resulting in a very substantial increase in the student-faculty ratio. Next. One of the consequences has been our challenge in responding to shifting patterns of student interest and our reduced capacity to meet student preferences for high-demand courses and majors. Next. Although funding for UC as a whole has increased, the share per student at Berkeley has decreased over recent decades. The bottom line, and a fundamental financial challenge, not just for Berkeley, but for the UC system, is that state support, tuition, and student fees don't cover the cost of undergraduate education. That gap has been filled in part with philanthropy and cash investment strategies. Both of these sources are unpredictable and subject to external market forces. We've depleted central reserves to maintain standards of instruction over the last several years. Central reserves are projected to be fully depleted by the fiscal close of fiscal year 23. Next. Now the threats. Next. This is the burning platform of this presentation: the seismic condition of our buildings and deferred maintenance. We're the oldest campus. We sit on a fault line. 180 buildings, including major instructional and laboratory buildings, are rated 5, 6, or 7. The combination of seismic retrofit and deferred maintenance is an $8.5 billion problem with no funding source. This has immediate consequences now for faculty recruitment and retention. Our capital infrastructure has become a key issue in retention cases, in chemistry, in physics, in biology, in economics. Faculty in Evans, perhaps our biggest seismic risk, and a very large classroom and office building, do not feel safe and want us to move them immediately, but we have no place to move them to. I recently received a report from the Chancellor's Advisory Committee on the Life Sciences. It has pages of description of the way in which deferred maintenance problems are hindering research. Let me read you a few sentences. Quote, "We have flooding issues at least monthly in our rooms in both Mulford and Wellman. The Mulford flooding is often sewage from the bathroom on the floor above," end quote. Quote, "The physical building itself," this is about one of our biology buildings, "itself creates a series of problems, including massive temperature changes big enough to affect equipment," end quote. Quote, Most of the autoclaves in Koshland Hall are broken, end quote. Quote, there are no BSL-2 biosafety hoods readily available as a shared facility on campus, end quote. Quote, contaminants and pests are coming in constantly, end quote. None of this is glamorous. Berkeley has 40% of the deferred maintenance in the system. It and the seismic condition of our buildings are the most serious threats to Berkeley's excellence. Next. Another threat is the statewide pressure to grow, a pressure intensified by Berkeley's growing competitiveness. In just 25 years, we've gone from admitting 1 in 2 to 1 in 7 of our applicants. This challenge is increased by local political and legal barriers to enrollment growth. You all hear about the lawsuits. We're a landlocked campus with much neighborhood hostility to development. Next. And we face, one more. And we face resistance that I think is mistaken, to students from outside California who often stay and enrich our state. Now the opportunities, next. Next. We're about to create our first new college at Berkeley in over 50 years, the College of Computing, Data Science, and Society. Data is the fastest growing major at Berkeley, and the Gateway, a new philanthropically funded building, we're going to break ground on it tomorrow, will house the new college. Next. We're developing a campus at Moffett Field for both industry partnerships and academic programs, concentrating initially on aerospace. Next. After our disappointment in failing to reach a partnership agreement with Mills, we've decided to use our own land at the Richmond Field Station to expand our capacity, but how we fund the infrastructure requirements and the construction of the campus, as well as the academic focus, will be a subject for another day. Next. Our best short-term option is to expand capacity in online learning, new professional degrees and certificates, offerings at the undergraduate level that will relieve bottleneck courses, summer minors, and opportunities to create what I call elasticity of place for our undergraduates. Next. We're seeking to expand our partnership with UCSF. We have complementary strengths. We can offer UCSF large, deep, excellent programs in areas increasingly important to clinical research, engineering, data science, and they offer us closeness to the clinical enterprise. We have well-developed collaborative research programs and joint degree programs, the most recent of which, a PhD in computational precision health, has just been approved. Next. Finally, we're moving toward full electrification of the campus through a microgrid, replacing a cogeneration plant that's on its last legs. This will eliminate 80% of our carbon emissions. We're grateful for the support of the legislature and the governor for funding the first stage of this project. Next. In 2018, the campus approved a strategic plan with the following 3 goals: empowering engaged thinkers and citizens to change our world, which we're pursuing through a series of initiatives designed to improve the student experience, focusing on the good, innovative solutions for society's great challenges, where we're concentrating particularly on climate change, the future of human health, and the relationship of artificial and human intelligence, the future of democracy, and innovation and entrepreneurship, and embracing the California spirit, diverse, inclusive, and entrepreneurial, where we're seeking to increase not only the demographic diversity in each of the campus's populations, but to create an even more inclusive community. All of this rests on a revitalized infrastructure, capital, financial, and technological. Next. We've been assessing our progress. Our 5-year graduation rates have improved modestly for majority and minority students, but there's still a gap we're striving to eliminate. Next. We're increasing housing capacity, but have a long way to go to reach our goal of 2 years guaranteed housing for freshman admits and 1 year for transfer and graduate students. Next. We're seeking to increase our ladder faculty through philanthropy. So far, we've raised funding for 31 new philanthropically funded FTE towards a goal of 100. Next. We're showing significant increases in diversity among undergraduates, graduate students, and faculty. Next. And research is thriving. Next. We're in the last 15 months of a $6 billion philanthropic campaign. We had a record fundraising year this past fiscal year, $1.2 billion, our second year in the campaign in which we've raised over $1 billion. And we've already raised more than $5.8 billion of the $6 billion goal with 15 months left to go. We're now, next slide, we're now focused on completing the goals within the campaign for graduate fellowships, faculty positions, and our capital projects. Next. So in summary, no, you skipped one. So in summary, Berkeley today is a world-leading campus characterized by brilliant students, faculty, and staff who teach, discover, innovate, learn, and challenge society to realize its full potential. But it's at the risk of decline due to structural issues in funding models for undergraduate education and the faculty-student ratio, research infrastructure modernization, adequate classrooms, student housing, and addressing seismic safety. We're planning and fundraising to continue to be a global leader, but we are in need of additional help from the state resources and flexibility. So what you can do, prioritize and help us advocate for seismic and deferred maintenance funding and provide the flexibility for us to develop new revenue streams. Thank you for your attention. And now I'm happy to answer questions.
Unbelievable, 15 minutes to describe one of the greatest public universities in the world, and you did a great job at doing that, and also being very honest about what the challenges are, so we appreciate it very much. Regent Suarez is first.
Chancellor,
And
the
Regent Park.
seismic issue is obviously a big concern. What's the backup plan? $5.8 billion is a lot of money, obviously. It seems unlikely that that's just going to emerge out of left field. What's the backup plan?
The backup plan is the following. We're working on a plan right now. I've decided that obviously just moaning about lack of state support isn't a very good solution. And so we're working on a plan right now to identify sources of campus funding that'll create a budget of approximately $30 million a year for deferred maintenance. The seismic problem we're trying to address through philanthropy, through, for example, the Gateway, which is our new building for data science, will house statistics, which is one of our seismically challenged buildings. It'll also house computer science, which will empty buildings into which we can move some of the engineers from other buildings in our engineering quadrant, which are sixes seismically. But we really cannot solve the seismic problem on the campus without the help of the state.
I think
it's just, I mean, the bottom line is that deferred maintenance and seismic retrofitting has relatively low appeal to donors. So we really do need partnership with the state to address what I think is just it's an urgent risk for the campus.
I think we're going to have to get real at some point, Chair Lieb, about this conversation and President Drake. On one hand, increase enrollment and bring more students to Berkeley, and on the other hand, we have no place to put them. And at some point, the rubber is going to meet the road here, and we're going to have what I think is a really tough conversation with everybody about how realistic that goal is to increase the population on your campus. It seems it's going to meet a breaking point at some point in the near future.
Yeah, it's very difficult to, I would think for every campus, it's very difficult to add enrollment without capital expenditure. And I think the greatest weakness for the University of California is the lack of a capital expenditure plan that is going to enable us both to deal with the acute problems, as I said, in deferred maintenance and seismic retrofit, but also the need for facilities for increasing enrollment.
And I would say that the chancellor has been extremely creative at using other revenue sources and other means to address this. So, for example, Evans Hall has our highest, what we call equivalent continuous occupancy in a 6, which is what we're trying to address most. So, philanthropy, she's going to be able to move a lot of the classroom buildings in there into the new academic building we approved yesterday, and then also into the new data sciences. But then also with the change in administrative work, we're going to probably decant University Hall of administrative space and then move more of those units down there. So I think there is some opportunity
But short term, these are not long-term solutions that are going to create more space for more students, more faculty.
Not
more
more
staff.
space, but it is addressing the risk right now.
Yeah, I mean, the two options, as I said, for really accommodating more students are a more robust online options, which I don't see as online degrees in toto, but allowing what I call elasticity of place for students. So that would really help us. But then if we could figure out some financing plan to create the horizontal infrastructure for the Richmond Field Station, as well as construction there, we could create a good campus at the Richmond Field Station, which is about a 15-minute drive from campus. It's not very far. And Moffett is also a really, in 10 years, Moffett will give us some capacity for enrollment.
And President Drake has a comment, and then Regent Park.
Just a comment to agree with what everyone has been saying, and Regent Cherish, in a normal world, you would have a place to recruit faculty to sit, to then create courses to teach students. So you'd kind of go from place to faculty to students. The funding that we get often comes the other way around, students first, without the faculty yet to teach them, and no place to put the faculty when we hire them. So it's the French word would be bass-backward way of approaching those things sometimes. And it's just one of the challenges that we have looking forward, so I appreciate your concern.
Regent Park? Regent Park?
I don't even think I actually raised my hand, but maybe you were reading my mind.
Oh, okay. I had you on the list.
Okay, well, Chancellor Christ, the Berkeley campus is an amazing place. It's an amazing campus, and I'm always struck by the tale of two UCs. And I don't even mean different campuses. I mean in a single campus, it's the tale of two UCs. It's the tale of incredible innovation, but also where sewage leaks. And we have to try to rectify that which we know our students and faculty and staff deserve. I appreciate your highlighting those things that really do need to be done if we're gonna continue to be what we have been to the state of California and beyond. With that said, I just wanted to highlight a few things that I was struck by in the written item, which is you are making strides in faculty diversity, but it comes on a base of which much progress needs to be made. And as we get towards that second step of hiring the faculty, just to really renew those efforts, because the hiring of faculty creates an opportunity to further diversify your faculty, which I'm sure that you know. Very, very excited about the College of Computing, Data Science, and Society. I believe we're going to try to hear that in January in terms of the establishment of the college, and look forward to hearing more about it. And then your acknowledgement of the role of innovation and entrepreneurship within the Berkeley campus. I noticed that the item actually even recommends creating a separate working group on culture and reputation, and we'd love to collaborate more with those on the Berkeley campus that are thinking about this. So I agree. We have a lot of needs, and I worry because the state has had historic budget surplus. And that doesn't happen every year. So really, how are we going to make this work? Not just for you, but for all the other campuses. So I hope we can do a much deeper dive into that in the future.
Yeah, I think because Berkeley is the oldest campus, Its problems with deferred maintenance and because of its location on a fault seismic retrofit are perhaps more acute than other campuses, but these are general problems for all of the campuses.
I agree that we need to have a good, deep discussion on some of the legislative solutions we can have for this deferred maintenance, and perhaps rename it would be the first thing to talk about, 'cause marketing, our marketing gurus here need to help with that. Regent Ellis, and then Regent Makarikian, and then Regent Riley.
Yeah, I just first want to applaud your efforts and creativity in dealing with this for however long in the faculty and students at Berkeley. When I was reading the item and listening to you, I was reflecting on 10 years ago, then Chancellor Birgeneau proclaimed Berkeley a federal institution and not a state institution anymore. And I really struggled with that, and I didn't like it. I still don't. I don't think it's characteristic of what the University of California is. We serve California, so first and foremost. This has been going on for a very, very long time. We didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight, but I hope we can come up with a strategy to deal with the most eminent needs. But then also the larger philosophical question is, how do we prevent from being here long-term? As we build more and more, we need a strategy to also make sure that this doesn't happen, with the new buildings we're creating, and that we don't just keep kicking the proverbial can down the road. So, and in closing, I just want to thank the donors who have helped support you as well. We needed to work together with, the state and our donors, but I really want to express my gratitude to all of our donors who support all the campuses, including Berkeley.
Thank you.
They're extraordinary.
Regent Makarikian, then Riley, then Regent Aguiano.
Thank you. Question is for perhaps the Chancellor or Nathan. How much debt capacity do we have for Berkeley?
None.
Yeah, Berkeley does not. Oh, Regent Makarikian disappeared. Berkeley is somewhat constrained in its debt capacity, especially for things like this, Regent Makarikian, because they are not revenue generating necessarily. If you're doing seismic and deferred maintenance, you're getting safer and newer buildings, but not necessarily ones that will accommodate more research or more students. They do have debt capacity for housing, and so we would be looking at using a lot of that to augment the housing that Chancellor Christ had highlighted early in the presentation.
But there was also, before just at the Finance Committee, there were two very expensive buildings that was approved for this. So that was basically, some of it was gifted funds on Bechtel, but the other one was from external financing, was it not?
Yes, it was, except that was AB 94. So we were pledging a portion of our state appropriation, and it was Berkeley's building. So that does not count against their internal debt capacity.
And what portion of the buildings are Category 7? Do you know?
They're not. Category 7 we vacate, so there are no buildings in Category 7. Category 6 are our highest priorities, and then 5 we are actually doing further studies to determine what level of seismic retrofit they need to have.
So we don't have any Category 7.
We do, but we red tag them.
Which buildings are those? We couldn't demolish those?
I have the list, but it's, I don't think there are any.
There are no major buildings. I mean, there's some sheds and things like that, things at the Richmond Field Station. We're fortunate that we don't have any 7s, but we have a lot of 6s, and they include major instructional and laboratory buildings, Davis, McLaughlin, Evans, which is our biggest problem.
So like Regent Sirs stated, we've talked about this many times before, that we really have to figure out how we should fix these, because every day you're adding to your deferred maintenance and also adding to these buildings getting worse and worse. It's very dangerous. Thank you.
Yes, it is, and it's the risk you're putting the campus population at, and it's become, every retention case I've done in the last year has had facilities and the condition of our facilities at its center, including a couple who left in economics because of the seismic condition of Evans Hall, which houses the economics department, among other departments.
A follow-up to question to Nathan is there. So how are we maintaining these buildings right now? From what budget are we maintaining these buildings right now?
Well, with deferred maintenance, most campuses have an annual budget, and Chancellor Christ just talked about adding $30 million to address deferred maintenance. We also highlighted in our state budget request, last year the Regents approved a $1.7 billion request for one-time money, and that was principally going to energy efficiency, seismic, and deferred maintenance. As the Chancellor noted, that often does not get a lot of traction with the legislature, which does like to fund new buildings and enrollment growth. So, I think we do, my hope would be that we can get another general obligation bond on the ballot, preferably as soon as 2024, and really take a big whack at a lot of these issues, both at Berkeley and across the system.
So that should be our goal.
That would be my hope, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
It's certainly a top legislative goal for us. Move to Regent Riley and then Regent Anguiano.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chancellor Christ, for that wonderful presentation that was both inspiring and sobering. Thank you even more for your incredible leadership of one of the world's greatest universities. So you gave us a lot to think about. I don't know if there's much, usefulness in looking back, but maybe a better question for Nathan. If that 2020 school bond measure had passed in California, Prop 13, how much money would that have brought to the University of California?
We had $2 billion of that.
$2 billion.
Yeah.
Which would be divided upon our campuses.
Yeah, and it was.
Yeah, and our project in that bond was the replacement of Evans Hall.
Right. So I know that a lot of us around this table are thinking about when would be the right time to advocate for another bond measure. Probably not right now, but hopefully in the next couple of years.
Really need to speak to the Chair of Public Engagement about that.
Absolutely. I'll talk to her. Thank
Okay,
you. Thanks, Chancellor.
We move to Regent Anguiano, which I believe is our last comment for the day.
Thank you. Just had two comments. So just 2 days ago, Foreign Affairs published an article saying America's education crisis is a national security threat. So by 2025, China will surpass us in amount of college graduates. And so I think the ability for us to educate more people in California is frankly a matter of global competitiveness at this point. And so I think it's important that we figure out how to innovatively grow our degrees, including looking at technology. I find it shocking that we can figure out how to splice a gene, but can't figure out how to create high quality online degrees and technology enhanced degrees. So that's point one. Point two is, I think that while we look at deferred maintenance, I understand it's a big issue. I think we also need to consider the capital needs of our campuses that are growing, especially the ones that are educating our Black and brown students. We have Riverside and Merced with over 60% underrepresented groups compared to the 23% that you shared, Chancellor. And so we need to make sure that we're investing in those campuses because otherwise we're creating a completely inequitable education system. That's it.
Thank you. Regent Montesano?
Thank you for the presentation, really helpful. And Nathan, when we come back to the budget discussion, I'm interested in how in the budget presentation that you're going to bring forward, you're thinking about the growth that is generated under the compact for the next 3 years based on the base of infrastructure spending that was included and how that interrelates to a capital plan. And then as you're thinking about different components for the relationship between kind of what we do on the innovation side and how it can create opportunities for different funding streams to be able to help fund some of this overall infrastructure, I think it'd be helpful to think about that. Just having a little bit of deja vu around the thinking that led to some of the change and the opportunities to benefit from the UC credit rating as an opportunity to generate savings that were reinvested into program back in the day. And we have some choice in where we go with the growth that this base generates and the funding that has grown in some ways at a different rate than the rest of the budget in a positive way, and how we use that to be able to address some of these investments in infrastructure that allow us to be able to have the capacity to be able to provide the benefit for the people that the instruction of the institutions provides.
Yeah, for the benefit of the rest of the board, working with both Director Matasanos and Director Cohen, we structured something called AB 94, which enabled us to take a portion of our state appropriation for operations and pledge it to capital. We've done that since 2014, and have issued over $2.3 billion of bonds backed by that. We did decide to extend it and go forward. We had said we were going to stop when we got to 150 million, but given that this is probably one of our most pressing and urgent needs, we are going to continue it for a couple of years.
I was also going to a slightly different point, which is that the inclusion of debt service in the overall base generates growth that is part of the 5% that is extended over time, and we can think about whether that source of revenue should be part of how we think about this overall infrastructure in terms of as we think about our total resources and our capital needs and looking at some opportunities for connecting the dots. So agree around that overall mechanism from a debt service standpoint, also thinking about our total resources, the growth that is generated in different components and how we think about those in relationship to the funding that we're providing. So anyway.
Yeah, that is a very good point, in that we have both the state's general obligation bonds and lease revenue bonds on our appropriation now, and those are declining balances. So as the overall appropriation rises by 5%, it does give us some headroom that we can pledge to more capital. Yeah. So yeah, we have been, you're betraying all my secrets. You know?
Great. Final word before we go. Faculty Representative Naklas.
I think you actually might have just promoted me. I'm just staff. but I'll take it.
Staff advisor. What did I say? Faculty? I'm sorry, staff advisor.
It's okay. I just wanted to publicly thank Chancellor Christ for her quite extraordinary leadership. She has steadied and accelerated the UC Berkeley ship, which we all know is quite difficult to maneuver at times. She's been a terrific advocate for staff. She immediately came in and advocated on behalf of students. From my perspective, the role that I have right now is all about housing. And she immediately came in and made a commitment to double housing, which we are definitely moving towards, albeit slowly. So I just wanted to say thank you for your leadership, your clarity around how you govern. You are incredibly clear about your decision rights and those of others, and it has been fantastic to watch you lead and learn from your leadership. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Joe.
Final word from President Drake before we adjourn.
Yes, and I'll be quick. I'm one of those who had a hard stop that we've passed. I have a call that's waiting for me as we speak, so I'll be very brief, and sorry to have to squeeze so much into a short period of time. I appreciate it. I was going just to say that I had a privilege last week of speaking at the memorial service of former Chancellor Piester, former dean at Cal. And he'd had a 70-year association with the Berkeley campus. And one of the great things about it is it gave us a chance to go through really his home and what this university had meant to him as the object, but really to our region, to our state, and to the nation. And it really had an incredible impact on California, but a real impact on the United States and on the world. It really is a jewel. And Chancellor, as you worked through in 15 minutes or so, just all of the incredible things that are happening, it really was a great reflection of what this institution has meant, and what a great jewel it is in our crown. Second, I wanted to say that as we talk about things like student-faculty ratio, that's important for student teaching. It's also important for faculty research and attracting the faculty who can build the future. And our faculty do weigh those opportunities when they're coming, and so it's a very important thing for our future. And then third, I was going to echo really what you said, Joe, that in the world of academics, in the world of leadership and higher education, Cal is a real challenge. I mean, it's an incredible campus that has real challenges, and we're just also pleased and proud to have you as a friend and colleague. Carol, you've done a wonderful job. You're doing a wonderful job stewarding this incredible institution, and we're going to continue working with you to make it even better in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you for that really incredible presentation. And Regent Park, myself, Regent Elliott, and Regent Riley, we do have another meeting that starts at 3, so we're going to have to go quickly, but and try to get that done as quickly as we can. So thank you very much, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.